Small South Carolina courtroom is the stage for what has become a high-profile double murder trial. Jurors will soon decide if Alex Murdaugh killed his wife and son in June of 2021. Deliberations expected to start as early as this afternoon. But first, the defense will give closing arguments. The prosecution hammering home that Alex's motive to kill Maggie and Paul Murdaugh was to distract from mounting financial crimes, creating a new drama in order to get compassion ahead of getting caught from stealing tens of millions of dollars.
The pressures on this man were unbearable, and they were all reaching a crescendo the day his wife and son were murdered by him.
Jury consultant and founder of Trial Methods, Inc., Alan Tuerkheimer, joins us now. Alan, good morning to you. I spoke to Mark Garagos earlier today about the case. A lot of people watching this think this is open and shut. But Garagos says there's not enough scientific evidence. There was no blood on this shirt. There's a theory that there were two shooters and that they were shorter than Alec in order to commit this crime. And he also said that those who visited the crime scene in past trials that he's seen, they usually end in a hung jury. So what are your thoughts surrounding all of that?
I don't think it's a slam dunk case at all. I think the prosecution laid out a pretty powerful case, even though it was circumstantial. But jurors convict on circumstantial evidence all the time across the country. And there's a lot that they're going to have to unpack. Deliberations are going to certainly be interesting, and a lot of the information is going to be considered. And at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things is that video where Alec Murdaugh lied about not being at the murder scene, where the video placed his voice just a few minutes beforehand. I think the defense is going to have a tough time getting through that. And if there are jurors on the jury who are leaning in favor of the defense, I'm not sure they're going to have a significant time explaining that away to fellow jurors who think that that's conclusive evidence that he did this and he's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Well, and I thought that they had proved, I mean, that's at least the narrative that has come up from all of this discourse, all of this evidence, that the timeline was within minutes of them being killed. But how scientifically have they proven it? I mean, is there any real baseline for how long those bodies were there dead?
No, and that's what the defense did. They did a nice job of trying to convince this jury that they botched the investigations. They waited too long. They didn't. Some of the clothing was never found. The lack of blood that was found, and even some of the tests dusting for fingerprints. Yes, there's no. If these jurors are going to require direct evidence based on the science, based on forensics, then yes, then he's going to be acquitted. But that's not the only factor involved. And so I think that this jury is going to have a lot to talk about, and we'll just have to see. We don't know a lot about the jury. And so it just depends on the juries, what they come in with and what their attitudes are about forensic evidence, because the jurors might end up convicting based on the circumstantial evidence.
What do you think about compassion for Alec Murdaugh? I mean, he has stolen from clients. He's stolen from his own law firm, his partners, his friends. He stole from the family of his deceased housekeeper who died on his property. He's admitted to all these lies. But do you think there's anyone in the jury who could feel so sorry for this man, who looks like his world is completely gone to smithereens, that they would acquit him just based on compassion alone?
No, I don't think they would do that. I think that the defense is hoping that there's enough, not necessarily compassion, but that they buy the narrative that his life was so distraught and turned upside down, and he was on some very heavy narcotics at the time. But I don't think his testimony came across that way. Mm-hmm. I do think that the defense has a good chance of at least convincing some of the jurors that he had so much going on in his life. And yes, jurors can compartmentalize. So they're just hoping that this jury can, on the one hand, see him as very troubled, did some horrible, horrible things, but then murdering his wife and son crosses another line. And that's another big factor that the defense has going for them, this motive. Some jurors are probably sitting there thinking, how on earth could he murder his wife and son?
Yeah, and the way that they were murdered, how could he do that even if he was high? It baffles a lot of people. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.